It feels crazy. It feels a bit crazy to finally be recording the post commentary for this. This video has been in production since February. I had this idea basically randomly on a stream to really talk about Ray as like a really game breaking option because game breaking options in other shooters were being discussed. And here it is. So, originally, this intro was not going to be this. This was going to be the Alarmo bit that happens a bit later, and I'll talk about it when we get to that, but this was a custom intro that Loki wanted with a custom song that Loki wanted. I was way more hands on deck with this video in terms of like how I wanted the format to be laid out and stuff like that. And I also had certain song choices and things like that, and then Loki had their own ideas that they wanted. Eventually, the mishmash of those two has turned into this video here. So ended up going with this intro to match the song that he wanted, and song choice is another thing where he definitely did take like a lot of creative liberty with it, which is totally fine, by the way. None of this is like a complaint at all. I think there's definitely like, there needs to be a mixture of vision from people editing the video and making the video, and I am like happy with what we ended up with. For some games, one weapon or character can end up defining them. Options that go beyond incredibly strong into game-breaking. Things I probably would not have used Mario Kart World footage in hindsight. I think this was originally a choice done because of this part of the video being made when Mario Kart World was new, just to have it be mentioned. But it's probably not one of the better examples here. Probably just better to use Funky Kong and Mario Kart Wii, honestly. But for the most part, I didn't have too much input on these choices. There is a line I debated cutting, though, from this thing to make the intro snappier. Most fans of any competitive game will be able to think of something like this. Maybe you're this one. Everything here, Fortnite fan remembering the Infinity Blade, tearing through every single build. Or a Mercy player, being able to solo res the entire team almost instantaneously. And she's not even the most broken thing in her own game. The list here, pretty much that. Trying to cut around that line in general to make the intro more snappy. But, I mean, the point of this is pretty obvious. I mean, even one of the top comments talked about branching out. Right, that's the idea. Have something to appease the non-Splatoon fans before we dive into Splatoon, have to kind of open things up. And so this intro is built around, actually explaining what things are. Here could go on and on, but today I want to talk about a new candidate for this discussion. This is Splatoon 2's Stingray. Can anybody get the... And this part was another, so I had the idea basically for this video to interject much more with commentated clips over the normal gameplay. So this part was one part that was supposed to be there, and I submitted a lot of the different clips. I did a lot of digging for what stuff I wanted to use, but some of these were also picked up by Logi in terms of who goes where, so there's another bit of a mix there. And this one was one I wanted to be there, like 100%. This was one of the ones that like really needed to be there. This is probably the most hype Ray will ever be. This clip from the 2022 Area Cup World Championships. Unfortunately, it also has to be the Ray that ends the most likely chance we ever had of winning a JP tournament, because this team won this tournament. This is semifinals. And SB almost won this set. They lost 1-3, and this and another Rainmaker game were painfully close with insane pushes. And, like, this literally stopped them 1 point off the lead. And then they got stopped again by the same player, this is the Squeezer, hitting, like, an insane jump 3-shot across the map. So instead, the Alarmo bit went here, which is what Loki wanted. I also debated moving this again because I felt this is like 3 effective bits in a row, right? We have the intro, we have that segment, and then we have the Alarmo bit, all back to back. And I pushed back on this because I was like, okay, I think this is too many things, right? And I also thought the Alarmo bit would be funnier if people understood a bit of the context, which is what we get into in the next segment. However, the clips used in this were also matching the same game that was used later, and those clips were more important elsewhere. The other problem is that the bit was so long that interjecting it in between anything else ended up being, it ended up not really flowing very well, so I couldn't really find a good place to move it. Maybe there would be some perfect world where this is a bit better, but I think at the end of the day, like, there being this many bits is okay, especially for a video that's more mainstream. I try to keep pacing very snappy and quick, and I think that bits can definitely help with the tension like that, and this is definitely the most amount I've thrown into, this is the first 2 minutes of the game, of the videos, 3 of them. But I think it works out. And then also Chibi, of course, did the art and animation for this, which is very sick, by the way. Very cool. I appreciate that. Also, there was originally a different idea for how these clips were going to be used, which was basically after it was explained that Ray stops the Rainmaker, this match has it happen and pointed out by the commentators like 5 times, ending with this exasperation from 9. Who, by the way, 9 in this video is in this video so much, having to commentate Ray. I feel bad for him. But instead we broke it up into using these 2 clips here and 1 clip later instead. So the bit didn't work. But I think it helps enhance those, and it could have also been just been like, okay, we get the point already. Like, you don't need like 6 stingrays back to back to show it. So I think this kind of works to still show, look how often that happened in this match if you're observant. So I'm okay with the bit being changed. And this is the we have to really fast explain how Splatoon works segment, in which I don't really have any major thoughts on this, honestly. You know, it obviously looks very nice, but there's not inherently too much here. The main thing is just deciding what to say, which is basically movement, fast-paced game, has objectives, has special weapons that you charge, and like a general idea of the power level of them via the examples that we have. And that's really about it. The only extra thing I have to say is I tried to use very clear-cut, transparent examples. Like I would say long-range displacement is killer whale, and it's like, yeah, dude, look at this. There you go. Easy to understand, right? I tried to pick out specials where, you know, stuff that isn't like Crab, right? Crab is awesome, by the way. Nothing against Crab, but it's like, if I want to explain what specials do real quick, Crab will never be my example. This is simple. Big laser boom thing, go boom. Or whale, or ton of missiles. And powerful killing options like Inkjet or Trizuka. Well, oh, and by the way, quite a few of these clips we added back in the sound effects for them. Most of that was done to use the montage Rio did that we used for the Stingray montage, which was originally going to have Bowser's second phase from Mario Galaxy 2 as the soundtrack. But I made the call to include the audio with this so it would match the other specials. So there were some cases where audio was added in post for some of the specials to make the clips flow better. That was something I've seen a lot popularized on Fire the Pirates channel, where they do Smash Brothers content, they'll go over tournament sets and they add back in the sound effects. We did a little bit of that here for this. And then, of course, this shot for Ray is amazing. You know, obviously was going to be an overhead shot given we're showing off global range. That's just the best way to do it. But again, visually looks really nice. And you can also just see the paint where we farmed Ray. Range Death Laser. That does 1.8 damage every 60th of a second, and 1.5 damage if it passes through a wall. By the way, we used to say frame quite a lot, and I've tried to, if I can remember, use 1/60th of a second. One, because Splatoon 4 might be 120 FPS, but also more mainstream audiences, frame rates and other shooters can be different, so you know, want to make sure it's like clearly translates the kill time. With players having 100 HP. This is a laser that lasts about... We also moved players having 100 HP here. You could kind of tell that was voiceover. Originally that was explained in the intro, but it fit better here. 7 to 8 seconds, and also not the intro, in the, you know, the part where we explain the game. The ability to see people through walls with a thermal effect when not firing. Being able to influence enemy movement is extremely valuable in a team setting. But Stingray has one quality to set it apart from everything else. Originally, I wanted to hide the fact that Stingray was aimable until this reveal, but it was basically impossible to do that, like, and have the clips be coherent. I thought it would be a really cool on paper to have this be a kind of big reveal, but I also have a big reveal at the end of the video, which was basically the motivation for the whole thing, so it didn't really need another. Small note that I'll put here, we tried not to use as much art in this video, like character art for this one. I feel like I mostly really wanted to keep the visuals clear and avoid of clutter, so it's really only there when needed a lot of the time. This was probably one instance where I could have made a cut decision, but again, it's generally supposed to be there. There's also a few cases of reused clips just because, you know, there's not too many super good quality Ray clips out there that work for this, for showcasing it on like a tournament scale. So sometimes there are a few reused clips that, again, is something I kind of wish we fixed a little bit, but it's extremely nitpicky. This is not worth spending like another hour ironing out. And here's where the other clip comes from, and again, thanks to Hypnos for giving me this match. This was very useful.
Otherwise, he's just gonna stop the person. Yeah, Biscuit goes straight down there.
So I actually had an edit in this clip behind there, which is right here. So in the actual match, at the point I cut, it cuts to the V shot, or it cuts to someone, I forget who. They die in middle, and then it cuts back to this overhead, and I felt it was much more jarring than just jump out and now look the guys in spawn. So that was one call I made where I was like, let's just trim that little bit out, and this clip flows so much nicer. Oh yeah, and by the way, Chibi was in a ton of this clips and also submitted a ton of clips in addition to the animations. So again, big shout out. All right, so this is the montage bit, which of course, it's montage clips. I mainly wanted to show off the map flaring stuff, which again, Rio does these very well. I already talked about how the song is different, so I don't have too much to say for this. The transition basically stayed the same from scripting to launch, but this is two purposes. One, show off that it just straight up can kill people, which is kind of the main thing that makes it broken. Like, yeah, no, we can talk about the objective power and displacement, but like, dude, this also just kills people across the map, right? And then the other thing is to communicate the skill barrier, right? Because Ray is very difficult, and like that still has to get across that this was like a player skill thing. So both of those are kind of like serving a dual purpose with this montage. But yeah, this section is now basically addressing all the counterplay. It's going through and it's talking about, okay, you can't hide, you can't outmaneuver it, and then, the main bit of complication is what about other specials, and it's like, okay, this is a resource game, especially Splatoon 2 being very resource heavy because main weapon power is in the gutter in this game. So it's like, okay, we really have to, you have to get that. Basically, even if you did get a good scenario out of this, the resource investment would always be in the Ray player's favor. This line also was very careful because the ending line I use for Ray is that it turns it into a single player game. So I do not mention single player game until we get there. Except for one option. Another iconic clip that I had to have in there. This blows up on Splatoon Twitter every now and then. So again, another one where, yeah, I know when I talk about Ray v. Ray, it's going to be this clip. This one was probably the most egregious example of using the character art, and I really should have just said otherwise, because it literally covers the Stingray. Like, it instead could have just been a zoom in to the Stingray icon behind my head. And that would have definitely been better. And then this was obviously a nice transition for the end of the game and the fate of it, right? We literally have a tournament that was ended by Ray. I had a bit here about talking about the, nerfs being reverted and all that, but Logie is the one who came up with the idea to use Bayonetta witch time effects for it, which was very cool, and I really like the segment. Again, I'm going to have it played muted so I can talk over it, but yeah, like show all of these and do the witch time effect and all of that. My only thing, and maybe I would change, it's again another thing that I'm thinking of now that I'm in post, is maybe just started from 2022 rather than, current day, but I think it works just fine. The nerfs reverted. You now have a version of Sting, and it's a great way to transition into using a Bayonetta song, obviously. I don't really have anything to say commentary-wise over these clips, because it's fairly self-explanatory what they're going to show off. The only real thing I have to talk about is, I almost forgot to talk about the health recovery. So this part was added in post. That wasn't there originally. So I had that added in. And then the other thing is I did actually... Oh yeah, one more thing here. Sorry. The Ray here not having shockwaves because it's an old version. I've just kind of hope people don't talk about that, but like it's there. Just because, that's the easiest thing to get a recording out of. And I did have a clip from Shadow Chimera of Ray in the Spawn Shield, but it didn't work with the script bit right here. Making it that far in Spawn, imagine getting all the way over there just to realize you are completely useless because you could use Ray inside your spawn barrier. And yeah, so I wanted someone actually fighting it there. Complete invincibility. At its peak. And then this was a good example. I do actually have a better example than this one, though. I could not find the VOD, but my team also had a match, and it's against El Firmament. This is against a different team. And there were 6 Stingrays, and it was poor tower control. But I think this one still, however, this one still works, and this is what I have footage of. And I do think having the dynamic of my job is paint the objective and don't die to death laser battles. We win because we have an extra death laser. Ends up being better script-wise. And this is the part that allows us to put Nintendo in the thumbnail. Thank you. Smash for Bayo. And there we go. That was the last line I had planned. And then originally, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Splatoon 3 being really good and such. But again, 1, kills video retention because it's the outro, and 2, it's just kind of unnecessary. I have plenty of videos praising Splatoon 3, so instead we just wrap it up a bit more cleanly. And yeah, I mean, this was a very fun video to get out there. I liked having more input than usual. I liked the mix of commentary and the extra bits and all of that. And, I've done Splatoon content for a while. There's definitely a lot of stuff I'm getting a little tired of and need a break from. This video was just really refreshing because it really felt like I was doing something I wasn't familiar with, and going through the editing process and being more involved in it was really good. Logie obviously did a fantastic job as always, and I personally just really enjoyed feeling like there was more to it, I liked that kind of, it felt like I was learning something new more than usual again, and that's a big thing that helps me stay motivated for it. So yeah, I would say this is the largest video production-wise of the year. Definitely not the largest series. Splatoon 3 meta history, those first 6 episodes is huge, and Splatoon 2 is in the works, even if it probably won't be done by the end of this year. But in terms of single videos, yeah, a really amazing one. I had a lot of fun with this. I hope you guys did too.